Alongside Nathan Crosby from the Brooks Bandits, my name is Brandon Ewanchyshyn from the Spruce Grove Saints, and this is the AJHL Playoff Show, Episode 2, North Division style, as we now wind down to just 4 teams remaining in the AJHL North Division. Let's start things off in Sherwood Park, and the Spruce Grove Saints are going to take them on. But that series goes the distance, all the way to Game 7, and it didn't finish too long ago. A 4-1 win for Sherwood Park on Tuesday night, a quick turnaround for them. At one point, Fort Mac was winning the game 1-0, but the Park came back, scoring 4 unanswered to ultimately take the series. The Crusaders, they were led by Tyler Miller, Carmelo Crandall. They each put up 8+ points in the first round. Eric Roos, who also represented Canada at the World Junior A Challenge, played all 7 games with a 2.16 goals against and a .931 save percentage. Nathan, I'm sure you were able to watch Game 7 or a couple of the later ones. What did you make of this series?
Got to watch a lot of the different series over the last 2 weeks, which was a lot of fun. And I thought this was a great first round matchup between Sherwood Park and Fort Mac. Kind of had an old school feel to it. And I was watching one of Evan McFeeder's, head coach of the Crusaders, one of his interviews before one of the games, and that's what he called it, at least, was it had a bit of a throwback feel to it. And it kind of got a little nasty between these two. And it was a lot of fun to watch. I thought the goaltending good in this series as well, outside of that blowout there early on. But Fort Mac, I thought what an opportunity for them, up 3-2 in this series, but couldn't close it out. Credit the Crusaders. That is a huge first round playoff win for them. Remember last year, Fort Mac knocked them out in the first round, so they get their revenge on the Oil Barons. Fantastic story, and some great scoring from the Crusaders in that round. Luke Monroe steps up with 5 goals. Carmelo Crandall, the Colgate commit, 4 goals. Dominic Payne had 3. So did Logan Howard, Brendan Cooney. I mean, they're getting a lot of scoring from different guys. It's not just one guy carrying the water there. So it'll be interesting to see what Sherwood Park has in the tank here heading into a very formidable second round opponent.
And taking a look at one of the other series, you got to give the Lloyd Bobcats a lot of credit. They took the Pontiacs to 6 games, but it was Bonnyville that pulled out the series win. But what a season series it was. 2 teams that are very close geography-wise. The average attendance throughout the series, 1,065 people. Unbelievable for both teams who don't get to see each other very often in the postseason. Let's talk about Jack Budd, one of the Pontiac defensemen, a massive pickup for them during the regular season. He had 9 points in the first round, 8 helpers, 1 goal. And Bonnyville, just like Whitecourt, we'll get to them in a second, but they played both of their goaltenders throughout the series. Cole Tisdale played 3 and Bodie Weiss played 4. Yes, there was a little bit of overlap there, but I found it very interesting that they were able to go to both goaltenders and still pull out the series victory. What did you see in that one?
Well, we said in the last episode that Bonnyville looks like they're prepped for a good run here in the playoffs, and they needed to get off to a good start. But man, did Lloydminster really make them work for it in that opening round, taking them to 6. And, especially taking game 1, I think raised a few eyebrows around the league in Bonnyville. I think, definitely a character building series win for the Pontiacs. But got to give the Bobcats credit. I mean, none of us were really giving them any chance here against Bonnyville, and nearly went 7 games. So yeah, give Lloyd a lot of credit. And just to touch on what you said at the beginning, I mean, it's so great that you have these 2 geographical rivals facing off in the playoffs, and that's what you want to see. That makes the playoffs great in this league. Saw it in the GP Whitecourt series. They're relatively close. Anytime Brooks plays Drumheller, you're going to see that as well. So love the divisional rivalries there in the playoffs. So good to see a nice playoff series there between Bonnie and Lloyd, and maybe a wake-up call here for the Pontiacs.
And the final series that we haven't talked about yet, Whitecourt and Grand Prairie. The Wolverines sweep that one in 4 games. The games were close. 2 out of 4 were 1-goal games. 1 went to overtime. Connor McKenzie, the AJHL goaltender of the year, he was good as advertised, but just wasn't enough as Caleb McDonald, Colby Brown led the way for Whitecourt. They combined for 13 points in the series. Ben Charette, just like the Bonnyville situation, played 150 minutes, and Lachlan Gordon played 110 minutes, both in the Whitecourt pipe. So again, both going to both goaltenders, but at the end of the day, Whitecourt pulls off the series sweep.
Yeah, Colby Brown, the former Olds Grizzly, what a series he had, an OT winner. He scored 5 in just 4 games, so great pickup for them. But yeah, 2 overtimes in this one. That game 3 was wild. What a GP erased a 3-goal deficit and a 2-goal deficit to force overtime, which they eventually lost. That's got to be a crushing loss when you come back all that way. But I give the Storm credit. I remember Sean Martin was in our first episode, and he was talking about this, one of the hardest working teams in the league is the Grand Prairie Storm, and they certainly made Whitecourt earn it. But impressive stuff from the Wolverines to sweep that series, knowing that they were going to have a tough second round opponent, whoever they would get. And so that rest was important.
And speaking of their opponent, that is the Bonnyville Pontiacs, and Michael Menzies caught up with Matteo Giampa.
I'm Michael Menzies, the play-by-play voice of the Bonnyville Pontiacs, and I'm pleased to be joined by Pontiacs forward Matteo Giampa. And Matteo, how about it? A 6-game series against the Lloydminster Bobcats that you were able to close out there on Sunday night. What did it mean for yourself and the team to be able to get that victory?
Yeah, it meant a lot for me, especially for the vets on the team. I've only been on the team one other year other than this year, but, it felt like we were in a 5-year drought, losing to Whitecourt in the first round of the playoffs last year. But it felt really good, and it was good to get that monkey off your back, and we're ready for Whitecourt now.
5 goals in that series for yourself, including 2 in that decisive game 6. They were pretty impressive goals. What were you seeing making those plays?
Honestly, when I'm making those plays and when I'm playing my best, I'm just not thinking out there, kind of just going off my instincts. And that's why you train in the summer and practice really hard and kind of practice how you play, so you can do that in a game and just trying to trust your instincts, and everything takes care of itself, kind of.
Now looking forward to the second round of the AJHL playoffs, and it features a rematch last year, Matteo, you guys going up against the Whitecourt Wolverines. How do you feel your team stacks up against Whitecourt?
Yeah, Whitecourt's a good team. They're big, strong, physical. They like to hit a lot, so it's going to be a tough series, but I think we have a really good team over here in Bonnyville. But if we play our game, I know we can beat them.
Looking forward to the second round of the AJHL playoffs. Now back to the AJHL podcast.
Special thanks to Michael Menzies for taking some time, as well as Matteo Giampa, to give us some insight into the Pontiacs win over the Bobcats and looking ahead to Whitecourt. That series starts in Whitecourt on Friday night. And Michael Menzies, I got to say, probably the best hair amongst all the broadcasters in the Alberta Junior Hockey League. It's unbelievable to look at. Whitecourt, they won the season series 4-2. They won the last 3 meetings of the season. This one's going to be close, though. You got the number 2 seed against the number 3 seed. It could go the distance. 2 teams that play a similar style, 2 great goaltenders. Depends who they go to, as both teams played both of their goaltenders in the opening round. 2 good coaches, an established coach who's won some Memorial Cups in Mario Pouliot, and Sean Martin, the AJHL Coach of the Year. Lots of different storylines to look at in a series that I think will not be done in 4 or 5 games. It's going to be 6 or 7.
Yeah, much like the 2 versus 3 matchup in the South Division, this kind of reminds me of that as well, with how evenly matched I think these teams are. Whitecourt did win the season series. A lot of goals, too. Whitecourt, 26 goals in their head-to-heads against Bonnyville this year. Pontiacs scored 19. So obviously the Pontiacs need to limit that Whitecourt, or hold down that Whitecourt offense, which was I thought impressive there against Grand Prairie in the first round. So, I think we'll see the effects of, because one of these teams went a little longer in the first round. That's something I'm going to be watching for, is what will the effect of that be here in the second round. This is a great, I'm happy to see these smaller markets like Whitecourt and Bonnyville get a second round series like this, knowing that one of these teams is going to be in the North Final, which will be huge for either. So this is going to be a fantastic series, I think.
You mentioned the rest versus rust debate, and Sherwood Park, who just finished their Game 7 on Tuesday, is going to take on a Spruce Grove Saints team that hasn't played since March 5th. Now, granted, the Saints finished the season on a 15-game winning streak, and they set a new franchise record for home ice wins. They also played their last 2 games of the regular season against Sherwood Park, and the Saints winning those 2 games pretty handily. But Sherwood Park on the other side, they're ready to roll, you would think. They're riding that high after a Game 7 win just a couple nights ago. The Saints did win the season series 5-1. They outscored them 31-14 overall. It's a rematch of the 2019 North Division final. The Saints won that one in 6 games. But again, Nathan, you talk about the geography. 2 teams that are just 45 minutes away. The hashtag suburb series or the cross city rivals, whatever you want to call it. You know, there's going to be a great crowd in both barns. What do you expect in this one?
I'm expecting some big crowds. I mean, you saw Game 7 in Sherwood Park the other night, 1,500 there. So that's awesome to see. And no doubt the Grant Fuhr will be rocking as well. So yeah, I think there's going to be a lot of buzz around that series, just at the proximity of the 2 teams. And Sherwood Park, you know, I think they have to go in pretty fearless into this series, knowing that they're just coming off a battle against Fort Mac, the only series in the first round that went the distance, the 7 games. So if they can continue to ride that high and that confidence, knowing that at this point, I mean, they're up against the defending North champs, so they know they know what they're up against. But you've already won a playoff series. You've had a great season, an improvement from last year. So I mean, at this point, they have to be pretty, fearless going into this series against the Saints, who you need to get their playoffs off to a good start. Don't need to tell you that, but I think this is a good test for Spruce Grove in their first playoff series of this season, and to play a team like Sherwood Park.
I agree, and I can't wait to get going on Friday night in Spruce Grove. It's always lots of fun when the postseason rolls around in both of these markets. No upsets whatsoever in the first round in the North, just like the South. It's the Saints and the Crusaders and the Pontiacs and the Wolverines. For Nathan Crosby, my name is Brandon Ewanchyshyn. That will wrap up the AJHL playoff show, North Division edition, for episode number 2.